Wes Buck Show.
It's uncut, it's unfiltered. This is the show of shows. This is the biggest names in drag racing. No holds barred.
Speaking his mind.
I've never had a problem expressing my opinions, but what we're doing here is bigger than that. These are conversations that need to be had in an unfiltered way.
Exploring hot topics.
Drag racing's all I've ever done. It's all I care to do.
And spreading the gospel of drag racing.
I respect the history. I appreciate how far we've come, but I want more for this sport, and I'll fight for it. This is the great American motorsport, drag racing.
The Wes Buck Show starts in 3, 2, 1.
Hey gang, Wes Buck here, Drag Illustrated Magazine, checking in. It is Wednesday, July 13th, 2022. I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. I got to tell you guys, there's so much drag racing going on this time of year. It's hard for me to wrap my head around it. I hear people all the time talk about the good old days of drag racing and how it used to be. I say it a lot, but it's worth saying again. Worth repeating. We are living in the good old days of drag racing. There's so much of this stuff going on. Over 400 active tracks in the country right now. And again, if it's not a big money back of the track race, it's a no prep shootout or a nostalgia nitro race or one of a gazillion successful pro mod operations that are going on in the country. A huge money bracket race. These are wild times we're living in. Very positive times, but it is a little bit of a head scratcher. How in the heck it's mid-July already? We'll be joined in a little bit by PDRA head honcho Tyler Crossno, Flow Racing's brand new content creator, a longtime friend of Drag Illustrated's Courtney Enders is going to be joining us. We're going to break down a little bit, just dive into all the happenings and storylines that exist in the Professional Drag Racers Association here in 2022. They've had a lot of great races. Again, weird that they've already been somehow to Galat. Already been to Beach Bend, already been to Norwalk, already been to Maryland, and now they're getting ready to go to kind of home base, if you ask me, Virginia Motorsports Park for what will be, I'm sure, an absolute barn burner, the PDRA Summer Shootout. Guys, I want to thank you, as always. This show, the lifeblood of this whole operation is your involvement. Your support, your encouragement, your contribution to these ongoing Wednesday water cooler conversations. We can't do this without you. So thank you so much for being a part of this deal. I'd remind you, please click like, click share, click subscribe if you're watching along on YouTube. We really appreciate the support. Let me see where my squad at. Mike, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, man?
I'm joined as always by my partner in crime, Mike Carpenter. What's up, dude?
Oh, we already got one barn burner in. So I was catching up.
Everybody
JT,
drink.
Yeah, JT went and got a drink really quick, so he's ready.
Oh, what a deal, man. Do you agree that it's a little bit of a head scratcher that it's already like summertime? And I know I say this a lot, but it's a pinch me moment every time I fire this thing up.
They say time moves faster as you get older, so I think it just means that we're getting really old.
Do I look as fresh as I feel? I got my haircut yesterday. I got the grays trimmed up, and that's I get a reminder of that every time I go get my haircut every 2 weeks on the dot. Big boy.
No, but it's man, there's a lot going on and excited for this weekend. We finally have the Western Swing kicking off. It feels like we've been talking about it for a month now, but it's really
our little production powwow. Yeah. I felt like I was getting scolded. You're going, we've been talking about the Western Swing for like 3 weeks straight. We may need to talk about something else. And it's now it's finally upon us, man.
Well, we've got something else to talk about too with PDRA going to VMP and then returning to VMP 2 weeks later for the Pro Stars, which is a unique move, a unique event. I want to talk to Tyler about that also and get his feedback on that Pro Stars event.
And it feels like there's just a lot of positive, for whatever reason, and I've said this to Tyler publicly, I've said it privately, but it feels like the PDRA just as a whole has like turned the corner. Like, I don't know if it's that 5-6 year mark, that's something, it feels like we've settled in to knowing that the PDRA is going to be a big part of the drag racing landscape. And I do think that with anything that's relatively new, and especially as we compare them to the NHRA that's been around for 7 decades, pretty much everyone else is a startup. Right. But when you start getting 5-6 years down the road, you go, hey, man, these guys have stood the test of time. They're doing huge things for our industry, great payouts, great professionally run, safely operated races. I mean, they're in the mix. Right. I mean,
there's no doubt, man. And there's something to be said for like standing the test of time. I think when they first started, there's no telling how long this deal is going to go or whatever. But like you said, almost or getting close to a decade into it at this point, and they've learned from the early days and continue to evolve. And I just think make smart moves all around.
It's funny. I read a quote earlier this week. I can't remember. I'm going to butcher it, but it's true. And especially when it comes to drag racing, typically the bigger the splash, the quicker the exit.
For sure.
Right.
We've seen that
I think
a lot.
and I think almost all of us are guilty of being a little bit hesitant to get on board with things because we see them. I mean, how many sponsors have we seen?
We've been burned so many times.
The community's been burnt, right? On a lot of occasions, there will be the best big new thing. And then a couple of years in, it's over, right? Or here's what's the next big sponsor or the next big super team. They pile into the sport. Everybody's excited. Everywhere you look, you see their logo. You blink, it multiplies. And then all of a sudden, overnight, they're gone, right? So I do think as a sport, we're a little slow to adopt, right? I mean, I think this is a very welcoming
skeptical.
group of people.
We're always very
stay skeptical early on. And then there just is a moment. And I believe the PDRA's had that, man. I know that Tyler and Courtney have been hanging out in the green room. There's a lot to discuss, guys. We've got Top Fuel No Prep on the horizon, new shows coming out, all sorts of things happening in the sport that we'll talk about here a little later on in the show. But let's go ahead and get this bad boy started. JT, if you don't mind, throw Courtney and Tyler into the ring with us. They're going to get elbow drop maybe. What's going on, guys? Tyler Crossno, Courtney Enders, welcome to the show. It looks like you guys are kind of getting sets put together.
Yeah, some nice backdrops there.
I like it.
Hey, we got to step our game up. Do you see what you two have?
Yeah, man.
Mike rolled onto his house.
I've added on to my house just for this. Wes made me do it.
Literally.
Mike's got the presidential podcast background.
Yeah.
You could do like a campfire
to make me look
chat.
smart. But look at this right here, Courtney. That's Erica Enders signed championship hat right here where I'm pointing.
Oh, wait, over here. I got one over there too.
Oh, yeah. I've got one.
I'm not.
It's around here somewhere.
I'm missing out.
Well, I do.
You got some sick cabinets behind you, though.
Yeah, I actually do. We remodeled our media suite here at Virginia, so figured it'd be a good spot to sit.
Yeah, I like it. Good internet in there, too. You know what?
Yeah.
Shout out to VMP for being one of the only racetracks in the world that have functional internet. Yep. You know, it's crazy to think. Seems like a huge ask here in 2022, but internet, man, real big difference maker at these drag races. Let's actually, Courtney, real quick, for those that don't know, can you give me your job title one more time at Flow? I butcher it every time. You're like the new fresh face at Flow is what I say.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. With the department that's just started, I think we're kind of figuring that out. I don't have business cards yet for that very reason, but it's the senior content creator for drag racing. So.
Senior content creator. I bet you love that.
She just went right in.
Guaranteed it's already in your email signature.
No, because I'm at that weird age. Weird age where I don't want to be called a senior anything.
Oh,
you know?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm going through that as well.
I'm pushing 40. So
senior in the corporate world is where you want to be, though.
Yeah, very true. Very true. I'm curious, though, how much of a challenge, something that, Flow doesn't get talked about a lot, and we'll dive into the racing storylines, but I think it's interesting and worth talking about. How much of a challenge is that for Flow? Like these live streaming providers rolling into a track that's perhaps a little off the beaten path. Can you give us a little insight? You were giving us some details before we started the show in the green room, and we don't got to dive into all that, but it's a significant challenge.
It is. And I will say that one good thing about coming on to this Flow program was everybody who I work with, above, below, to the side of me, has been to a racetrack where they have been burned by some kind of variable. So they get it going into it. And part of the reason why this weekend coming up at Tyler's race here is going to be my first race as an official content creator with Flow.
Senior.
We chose senior, geriatric senior, however you want to say it. We chose this racetrack for a lot of reasons, but one of the main reasons was because of the resources that we had there. I text Tyler, I blow him up all the time, like, hey buddy, can I get a golf cart? But like, it's the truth, because he tools us up to be able to cover it better. When we go to these racetracks that are awesome and the fans come in, but you can't upload a single thing, they get it. A lot of companies that I've worked with that don't have their boots on the ground at the racetrack don't get it. They want it now, and they don't understand that. So it's a huge problem in our industry, huge problem. So,
well, and hopefully it's something that, thank God there are companies like Flow that are making investments in technology like that, because it is a difficult ask, especially for like the small track operator. Tyler, I'm sure it's not hard for you to go back in time and think about putting on a race in Holly Springs, Mississippi, right? And some of these other venues that we've all spent a lot of time at over the years that, I mean, it's a pretty big ask to call up the track operator and say, like, hey man, I'm really excited about this big money shootout you're putting on, but could you drop 15, 20 grand on a satellite internet connection so that we can live stream it? I mean, that's an unreasonable thing, especially for a lot of these small business owners.
Yeah, 100%. And we see it a lot in smaller racetracks. It's like it stands out really bad, but as bad as you hate to say it, some of those smaller racetracks have some of the best racing too.
That's the issue, right? I mean, and I think that it's something that we've all got to we got to recognize that we're still early on in this technology, right? I mean, I know that we expect a lot because
we're spoiled by it.
We're spoiled by
how
Netflix and Hulu and the internet speeds that exist in major cities. And, even in rural areas now, high-speed internet is readily available. But we fail to realize that, hey, you get out 10 miles outside of town or well away from civilization where they let us folks drag race without bothering us. It gets a little sketchy out there.
I would say internet providers need to go to drag strips and like see where you want to see the outer limits of your network performance or whatever. Go to any drag strip because they are ideally located where there is no internet coverage. And I think most racers and fans that have been to a race or go to a track frequently could agree with that. So hopefully it gives a little more leeway as far as you guys building up your technology at Flow Racing, because everyone knows the challenge that you guys are up against.
You would think, but it's funny. My very first week, like the second I went on y'all's show, and in the drag racing world now, Courtney, Flo, we're going to be the same thing. So whenever there was a technical mishap, which again, we take it for granted, you don't know all the things that go into bringing that truck there to put that on the show. But when you go in there and something happens, I'm not at the race. It was like my birthday on Facebook. I have never gotten on, and I'm like, all of a sudden,
now you're the official
I'm the
point of contact.
Yes, but it's enlightening and eye-opening when I did it as a pit reporter to see just a little bit. But now that I'm on the insides of, there's guys sitting at home. We air at PDRA for 15 hours a day. I mean, there's a lot of people and a lot of things that go into it. So as a consumer, I used to get mad, but now I'm like, hold up, pump them brakes.
Oh, dude, and if you think, I mean, like doing anything for that period of time, if we expect there to be nothing happen, not a single thing that disrupts something that is taking place over 15 consecutive hours, we're insane. I get excited just that we can watch drag racing, especially when it's 365 degrees outside like it is right now here in North Texas. I mean, I'm not super thrilled to go spend 15 hours at the racetrack, but if I can watch everything, don't get me wrong, I want to go racing. I mean, let's be honest. I'll go. If somebody wants to go, let's go. However, it is nice to be able to sit at home, right, and watch this stuff. I'm blown away by it. And I honestly think that as our sport embraces some of this technology, how much do you think the fan base contributes to the scale of stick and ball sports? Like all this content that's created in the grandstands, all this content that's created in the parking lot. I mean, we need that. I mean, because it's honest. Do you guys have discussions about that? Like at Flow, that fan produced content. I mean, some of the videos that you see of Antonio Brown going crazy in the end zone, that wasn't an ESPN camera that caught that in an NFL game. It was a fan with a cell phone.
I think the official term I've seen Meta or Facebook using this is UGC, user-generated content.
Yeah, we do. And honestly, we have those conversations, and on a larger scale, when we go into a race like PDRA, may not be, the fan base stuff, watching Antonio Brown in the parking lot, but it's, hey, who's already there, whether they're racing or getting content or their dad races or something, who's already there that we can understands the sport, that we can hire, that we can use, that we can pay for their stuff. They are very, very open to all that kind of stuff.
We need it. I mean, that is the type of stuff, even I find myself as, we distribute a tremendous amount of content here at Drag Illustrated, and you can't really have enough. I mean, we've been doing this for 16 years and we still find ourselves at different times scraping the bottom of the barrel, going like, man, we're out of this type of content. Like we need to go to it's crazy. You can't really have enough of it. We joked that it was a lot of work. We thought back when all we had to do was the magazine 12 times a year, we thought that was rough. What are we going to do? How are we going to,
but now you're daily.
I mean, you were tasked with creating content multiple times daily. And I look at this space and how much it would help us if we encouraged that, because there was a huge movement, and I understood it, to like shut down live streaming, you know, from cell phones and stuff like that. But it feels like it's too far gone. You're not going to be able to stop that stuff from happening. Yes, you can try to discourage it or whatever, but I think that there comes a time when you go,
why?
It helps more than it hurts.
Yes.
It puts more eyeballs on this stuff, generates more interest. And if you're like in the name or from the perspective of flow, if you're providing a better experience, you're gonna win their business eventually. Correct. You know, it may not happen immediately, but you're gonna win them eventually.
That's why that logo's on your screen back there, because I've voiced this. I spoke to you guys before I even took the gig. You cannot come into a space, especially in a space like drag racing. We're cult, right? We're family. We are a tight-knit community. You can't come in and take something over. Like you said, you've been doing this 16 years. So my very first order of business was, you know, they asked me, who should we be involved with? What should we be doing to work smarter, not harder? Because we can't have me going in and creating all of I'm the only person there.
We've been down that road.
Side. Yeah, you can't do that. So yeah, why would we not work with you when you guys are already the avenue for that, where we can just we're all taking the same news, we're all covering the same series, and just have a space for ourselves to be, okay, well, we come on here and do this with you guys, but then we take it to another level when we go to the track with Tyler and all that stuff. So it's crucial to all work together. And sometimes we want to be the first, or we want to be the best, or we want to be the guys to have this story, but there's so many different sides to every story that I just don't, and this is not what you brought me on here to talk about, but,
no, but it's fun.
But there's no reason that we don't like use each other. So
100%. And that whole conversation goes back to what Mike was saying about UGC, user generated content. I joke all the time that what a position a company like Facebook finds themselves in, that they don't got to pay a bunch of writers. They don't got to pay a bunch of videographers, because we're doing it for them.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
There's a whole world of us creating content product for them. Right?
That's how I feel when I get an email from Nate. I'm like, ooh, Nate did this for me. I'll put it on the racing website.
But I mean, it's that classic work smarter, not harder, man. And it's a really interesting time. Let's get into some racing, guys. Before we do, I want to remind everybody that each and every week, the Wes Buck Show is brought to you by way of our friends at Pdra'S Safety. Pdra'S Safety is known for their top quality racing safety equipment, from drag chutes and seatbelts to fire suits, gloves and blankets, all 100% made in America. Log on to StroudSafety.com. Make sure you tell them we sent you, guys. As I said early in the show, we are 4 races into the PDRA National Event Tour. Really incredible start to the season. Of course, some of the typical battles with rain, but we've seen some incredible racing. I actually joked a couple weeks ago that I think we have to be careful of becoming desensitized to what's going on within the confines of the PDRA. Like 3.6 second 8th mile runs are becoming so commonplace that I think, to some extent, we're losing sight of how significant that is. A few years ago, 360 runs were moonshots, shots heard around the world. Now we're doing it every weekend, side by side.
And most of these teams make it look easy too. Yeah. They're so professional, have such good equipment. I mean, from top to bottom, everybody's rolling in there with like all the latest stackers and everything. Junior dragsters rolling out of the nicest stacker.
I cannot imagine having to do parking at a PDRA race. I've joked with Tyler before, like everybody shit's so nice.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can't imagine trying to figure out where I'm going to put 400 $500,000 toter homes and stackers, because I know the guy driving that thinks he deserves to park on pavement.
Yep.
And by his friend.
By his buddy.
And power. You got power hookup?
Yes. Yeah. You got to have power. You got to have power, and it's got to be accessible for all his buddies to park next to him.
Right.
It's the hardest job. I'm 100%. Once you park it all, it's like, man, this is easy.
Right. It's all downhill from here. Everybody's already as mad as they're likely going to be. You
exactly.
know what I mean?
Get all the madness over from the start, and then we're all good.
Parking is stressful. And from a racer standpoint, like we had to get there. When's the race start? Friday. Well, we better be there Wednesday night at the gate so that we can be in line to get parked. And then, you're pulling around there and, oh man, I don't know where they're trying to put you the first time. I don't know if this is going to still work. Can we try another spot?
Every time I put on a race, my phone, you're answering calls till 4 a.m. You're like, hey, the gate's still open. We just rolled up. And it's like, well, myself and the rest of society are sleeping, because it's 4 a.m. You know what I mean? Just park. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, the track's locked. You'd be mad if it wasn't locked at 4 o'clock in the morning. You know what I mean? So let's just wait till the sun comes up at least and we'll start parking again. You know, it's just so funny, man. But I get it. So let's get into the PDRA. I mean, let's just do our overall take real quick and go around the room. I'm going to start with you, Tyler. Just, you know, halfway through the season, as I said, we've seen some incredible racing. Great to see you guys back in Norwalk. Great to see big turnouts at a lot of these events. You know, Maryland International Raceway, despite the heat, hell of a crowd. A really, really solid start, wouldn't you say, Tyler?
It has been. For the first 4 races of the year, and let's just be honest, you never know what's going to happen year to year. Not even just on the racing side, but in the world in general. You wonder about fuel prices. You're scared of hotels are getting more expensive. Everything it seems like is going the wrong way to make you want to sign up and go to the racetrack. But man, it's been a heck of a start. 4 great races. Galat was absolutely packed with 336 entries to start the year off. Then we went to Bowling Green with, I think, right at 250. Norwalk was right at 260. And then Maryland a couple of weeks ago was right around 275. So just immaculate crowds. And like you said, everybody comes in with the nicest, tip-top, best of the best equipment that they can have, and it shows that on the racetrack. The racing has been absolutely phenomenal all year long, from our pro classes to our junior dragster classes. It's some of the toughest racing that I'm around year-round here at Virginia every week, and then with PDRA traveling. But when I look at other series and say, hey, what are we doing wrong, or what do we need to do to get better? Is somebody doing a different program or something like that that's better than what we are? You look at the numbers and you look at everything like that. I feel like our product is up there, and I'm very proud of our racers, very proud of to be in the situation that I am. Very blessed to work with the Franklin family. They've given me an excellent platform to work with, to critique, to go back and forth with them on. Tommy and Judy, Amber and Ashley, they're the best family to work for in racing, 100%. I've told a lot of people, and people joke around, hey, man, would y'all ever sell the racetrack? And I'm like, yeah, we'll sell the racetrack if you have a lot of money and you want to keep it a racetrack, but I don't come with it. I work for Tommy. And I mean that. It's a family that's easy to work for. And when you respect your bosses and you enjoy working with the people, then you don't mind putting in the hours, putting in the time, and going down in the trenches. And that's what it takes. And you really see that with the PDRA crowd because the racers believe in Tommy and Judy. Like you said, they've been around for, I think this is the 8th year, if I remember correctly, of PDRA. And they've been they've stood the test of time just in the PDRA. When that started with 4 different people, Tommy and Judy are the ones that kept that thing moving for a lot of years. And I think that's why it's such a tight-knit group at the racetrack. Because
you have to have somebody that's willing to do that. And we talked about that a minute ago, that typically people are very excited, right? Like they had several good years in their business, right? And they're going, you know what? I want to drag race and I'm going to start my own series or whatever. But a couple of years in, you take some L's, some significant L's. It's pouring rain half the year for some reason. It feels like the world's out to get you. And it's easy to get disenchanted and just go bass fishing or just become a competitor, right? I mean, I've talked to innumerable race promoters and track operators that tried to race. And they're like, man, you're in the staging lanes, getting ready for like the first round. You're all stressed out, and you got some guy yelling at you because the rollout's wrong in the right lane, and or they got parked in the weeds or whatever. And it's so hard to separate those two things. And I think the Franklin family did a couple of things really, really well. First off, they put someone like yourself in place, Tyler, that could be that buffer and keep them out of the line of fire. I know they can't completely avoid having to contend with some of these things, but I think you've done a great job of insulating them and letting them go drag race when it comes time to drag race.
Yeah, and that's, I tell people all the time, don't go to their trailer because they're not going to have the answer for you. And that's the hardest part that we've all had is Tommy and Judy are so open to wanting to make people happy and feel like they're at the right place to come race, that they want to help as much as they can as well. But me being the guy that I am, I'm like, send them to race control. You're not going to, it's not your job to tell them the run order. We give them that online. We give them that in the packet, we'd give them that option, but they're always going to be the one that puts the best foot forward. No matter what they're doing, they'll drop anything they do to go out and help somebody else. And we see that it translates across the entire pit area. Since you like to bring up the rain statement so many times, we have a lot of people that'll come up whenever we're fighting weather, and they'll be like, "Hey man, what can we do to help?" We run out of equipment. We have so many.
Mother Nature.
Yeah, exactly. Use some of that hot air that you have sometimes.
There's two sides to that though, because I get a kick out of that sometimes, because I grew up in an era of like, if it's raining, we're in the tow rigs, hot lapping the track, trying to dry it. And I don't know that I've ever seen that kind of, what's the word, like dedication or gumption from your competitor base.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because if you think about, if like the ring collapsed at a UFC fight, the fighters aren't going to come out of the back and help reconstruct it. You know what I mean? Nor is like, if the field is demolished during an NFL game, the players aren't going to leave the benches, and the sidelines to go like work the sod, right? And I know I'm comparing apples and oranges, but you have to admit, we are a part of a uniquely passionate group of people. This is a uniquely passionate community that can be good and bad, right? Because they're wound up like physic woodpeckers. They think what they're doing is the most important thing in the world, right? And to them it is, right? They don't realize that, hey man, there's a whole lot of people that want to race, or there's a whole lot of people that are waiting for their class to get called, or want to race at a different time, or whatever the case may be. So I think you guys do a great job. What storylines do you guys really see starting to develop? Courtney, let's bounce over to you, senior content officer, or I think that's right, senior content officer at Flow Racing. Pretty close. What do you make of this midway point of the PDRA season? Or is there anything that you're especially interested in as you head out there to capture some stuff?
I am. So, of course, everybody, we want to talk about Pro Mod. We want to talk about Franklin and Halsey and that whole deal, and we'll let Tyler dive into that. But something that I've followed is 632. So it doesn't get too much attention, but I think it is with this. I don't want to throw the females in the mix, but they are on top. We've got Lexi and Amber. But something that I find really interesting there is the fastest cars are not winning the races necessarily each week. And then we've got a newcomer like Alan Drinkwater, who also is being tuned by another competitor in the pro stock category kind of deal. But I think that when it comes to the other classes, we've got domination. We've got Halsey sitting on top. We've got, I think in each of the classes, we've had multiple winners. We've had Halsey win twice. We've had Amber win twice. We've had Placino win twice. But we've got really a toss-up in 632 when it comes to that. I don't think that Saturday, sorry, my NHRA talk. I don't think that we necessarily know what's happening on Saturday when you go into two eliminations on 632. And I love that there's new faces in the mix. And I love the Shameless crew, and they've got their stuff together as always with Walt, but it's not a given. So my favorite pick of the batch is the Pro Outlaw 632 stuff. And I think we've kind of got a similar deal in Pro Stock running there, where Elijah Morton is a fast as crap every weekend. JR Carr, fast as crap every weekend. But then you've got guys like Tony Gillig and Johnny coming in and kind of disrupting the nature. And we've got the champ from last year, who hasn't really done much since the first race. So I think that there's the things that catch my eye are the unexpected. And I think that 632 and Pro Stock are showing that.
What do you guys make of the fact that Pro Outlaw 632, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, Courtney, I think that it's like the unsung hero of the PDRA in many ways, but perhaps for no reason more so than the fact that it's produced a lot of stars. Don't you think that it's kind of like if NHRA has a fuel dragster that produces all these stars, right?
Correct.
PDRA has Pro Outlaw 632. Wes DeStefano make the move from Pro Outlaw 632 into Pro Nitrous while continuing to field a Pro 632 car. Dylan Voss, Johnny Placino wins a championship in Pro Outlaw 632, follows it up with a championship in Extreme
like
Pro
a stepping stone almost.
Don't you think that that's a very necessary thing? That's what I love about it, and I'm glad we're talking about it, because Lexi Tanner, Amber Franklin, we need to be Alan Drinkwater coming out with a new car. Like, we have to be talking about these folks because it is highly likely they will be top qualifiers in the headline marquee attraction categories in the coming years. It's a really exciting thing that I'm glad the PDRA does and treats them well, because it's a great place for a racer who has aspirations of racing heads up, which I I know that this is something that gets everybody up in arms, but I think pretty much every drag racer, the dream is to race heads up in some category, to go heads up drag racing, and to have the opportunity to do it in typical drag racer fashion. It has certainly gotten out of control. I mean, I won't say out of control, but this isn't your grandpa's 632, right? This
it was originally intended for.
But don't you think, Tyler, that it's still relatively close? It's none of this stuff, no heads up category in drag racing is ever going to be like budget friendly or super affordable. But if you had to identify a class that was still within the realm of reason for the average working man or small business owner, man, I point at Pro 632. I really do.
Well, look at the cars. So take away the drivers for a second and go on the car route. Amber's driving Tommy's old car. Lexi's driving an old Jerry Bickle car. Drinkwater's driving a car that was in the barn for 9 years. Lawalt Lanigan's driving Henry Duguay's old Top Sportsman car. Daryl Stewart's driving Todd Horner's old Extreme Pro Stock car. So you don't.
Johnny Placino won a championship with what's his name's his dad's old Escort, right? But somebody else drove it for a while. Mike Dobbins drove it for a little while. I mean, it's cool to see those cars be repurposed. Yes. Tony Gillig, that Cutlass.
Correct. The Cutlass from, of course you would name a Cutlass.
Well, I'm trying to get into heaven, bro.
There we
go. On it every day. Every day.
But look at that from the standpoint of buying a car. Okay, if you're a guy coming on the outside that says, hey, I'm racing Top Sportsman, but I want to go heads up. All you got to do is throw a 632 in your Top Sportsman chassis and you're ready to rock. Now, you can't say that for majority of Top Sportsman cars that say, hey, I'm going to go and jump into Pro Nitrous. Not with that chassis, you're not.
No.
And that's $160,000 investment if you're calling a chassis builder right now. And that's not a lot.
And you're going to have to wait on a car. And
you're 2 years out.
And you're getting something. And I'm not saying that a new car isn't a proven combination, especially with the level of quality and care that chassis builders take today. It's different than it used to be.
Correct.
But where you'd go buy a car and then you're kind of on your own. Right.
Yes.
A lot of these guys, chassis builders today, seem much more committed to the success of their customers than I think they were in years gone by. But to your point, you're buying a car that's been raced competitively in Pro Stock or competitively in Pro Mod that is pretty well sorted out, and you can put a milder engine in one of these things. I mean, you can go get a 632 for reasonable money right now. Now, granted, are you going to run at the front with the rest of these guys?
You can also get them for unreasonable money.
Yes.
Too, because there's a range there. But to your point, the performance of the cars, I think, is what makes it a good stepping stone. Like for someone, Amber Franklin, I think is like the prototypical.
Dude, we missed Camry Caruso.
Yeah, Camry Caruso was there. It's a prototypical
for like 5 seconds.
But she
absolutely
came in there, and I thought it was interesting because she knew that they knew collectively that they wanted to race Pro Stock someday.
Yeah.
And where else could you put her that would really prepare her for NHRA Pro Stock? I mean, there's not a great spot. Put her in it. I mean, unless you're going to put her in B altered.
Yeah,
you'd have to put her in B altered Comp Eliminator. Really,
then you got to go chase that shit.
And you don't want to do that. So you want to go race heads up. Pro Outlaw 632, man, especially with some of these classes that are, I won't say fading, but the interest level seems to be waning, pointing at a handful of like drag radial categories that we all love them, but they're very seasonal, right? You can only really run it early in the year or late in the year. So if you're a guy that wants to go racing a lot,
and it's not similar to a big tire in so many ways. It's not giving you that experience because let's be honest, Amber's next move is Pro Nitrous, right? But where do you go from junior dragster to Pro Nitrous? That's a big leap.
Yeah.
Especially with how these Pro Nitrous cars are running these days. 632 is a perfect fit for that.
What do you think, Tyler, can be done just to protect this class? Because I don't know how it's happened. I think the unique part about NHRA A-Fuel Dragster is that the rules don't change very often, right? I mean, it's a pretty stable deal. Now, there have been changes over time with nitro percentages or with overdrive on the top, the screw blown combination. But I think the fact that it's super stable rule wise has contributed to it. But it's kind of amazing that class consistently over time has continued one after another. I mean, going way back, right? I mean, Gary Selzy, Blaine Johnson. I think about
Steve
Ashley
Torrance.
Force, Steve Torrance. I mean, Alex Laughlin. I mean, there's a slew of people. Megan Meyer, I mean, is about as big a star as sportsman racing has. And she's done it all on the back of A Fuel Dragster. I mean, I think about your boy Will Smith, a big part of the PDRA family, what he's accomplished in A Fuel Dragster. What do you think can be done, maybe from your perspective as the PDRA, or maybe outside of that, to just keep this class as healthy as it is right now?
So really, and this is what we talked about, the 632 platform is pretty easy. It's a 632. Pretty easy. Make it to where you don't have to make a wholesale change. I think back to the Pro Nitrous days of when there were 25, 30 cars. There wasn't a 959 in the field. They're all 903s. Well, then when technology pushed and elapsed times pushed and everything like that, and everybody went to the 959, some of those people didn't make that jump. Well, then that car fell off the qualifying sheet. So the biggest thing in my mind is you have to be consistent, and it's parity and it's consistency. Whether it's, hey, we're going to stick with 632, that's the number, that's what we're going with. And then we just fine tune it with, okay, hey, it's a single 36 combination in Amber's car. It's a single stage 36 jet. In Walt Lanigan's, it's a dual system 36 jet. Is the change more jet in one to speed it up, or less jet in one to slow it down, or vice versa, or both in one direction? The more you can do it at a small rate, the better it's going to be in my mind, because then it's you're telling somebody, hey, look, you got to go buy a pack of jets. That's a lot better than saying you got to go buy a billet cylinder head, or you got to put a 706 in because instead of a 632, or whatever that is. That the way that class is laid out, it really reminds me of Pro Stock, in which I know everybody in this thing just was like, whoa, did he just say that? But you're kind of not really all on the same playing field, but horsepower is all you got. Those things are all in early in the run. And then it's gearing, ratio, weight package, trying to make it 60 foot hard, all of that type thing.
How about, I got one for you. You ready for this?
Uh-oh, here we go.
Claimer rule on the motors.
That would be.
I'm telling you, man, some shit like that. I'm not a big circle track guy, right? But I'm telling you, if you put some sort of claimer rule on it, and I mean, you got to keep it 632. And I agree with what you're saying. The thing that I like about it specifically is that Mike and I talk about mechanical limitations a lot. I think we got to keep these guys away from the mechanical limitations of these engines. Like, if we let Pro Outlaw 632 get to a point where you got to run 4.0s all the time, or you got to run bottom teens, and you're kicking the rods out of this stuff and you're hurting them and you're burning pistons, we're going to see it nose over and be in the ditch real quickly. And it's a very difficult deal, because I don't know that anybody's mastered it, but I mean, I kind of tongue-in-cheek, half-heartedly mean the claimer thing, because if you want to keep it where no one's going out and hiring Pat Musey or Rear Morrison or Gene Fulton to build a $162,000 632, you say that every engine in the pits is available for 40 grand. I mean, you will keep some people from doing that.
I think that it invites people too. Again, I almost said this a minute ago, but now it makes even more sense with Drinkwater. Like, they are a newer group of guys who come out there, and it was a class that was inviting. It invited them to be able to allow Johnny to go find this car. Literally, like, I've tried to get them to let me do a story on the build of this car 100 times, and nobody wants credit for this car, and it pisses me off. But this car, what they did, they were literally on Facebook Marketplace finding parts for this car to put it together, and then they go out with a new driver and they win the freaking first race of the year. Like, that is such an inviting thing for people. And I think that creates the perception that it is this stepping stone class. And if you did do something monumental, you want to talk about Pro Stock, like make everybody go EFI, like, that's going to shove those guys right out the freaking door, because they're done. They're done. They've spent all their time. They've spent all their money, and they've hired the top notch that they can hire. And that's all they can do. And so then what do? Go down? You can't go down. Yeah. So I think that it's just a very, very inviting class. And that's why it intrigues the crap out of me.
And if we can get, and this is something that drag racing suffers from, because another thing that we could talk about is just how absolutely bananas PDRA Top Sportsman and Top Dragster is. But, to get some of those guys, because I oftentimes go, man, there's about a dozen of those dudes that I want to grab and lead them over to the Pro Nitrous pits. You know what I mean? But there's an equal number of those guys that could probably pursue heads up racing in Pro 632. But we have this whole thing in drag racing where no one wants to go backwards, right? No one wants to go slower than they've been going. So it's tough. But if we could find a way collectively, and I'm not saying that I have the answer, I'm saying that I think we could find one. And one of them is what we're doing right here. Talking about it.
Talk about it.
Right? Yes. Talking about it, keeping it relevant, making sure people know what it is, and doing anything we can to just pour fuel on the fire, because it really is an important thing. You said it, Courtney, inviting. Like, it looks like you can be successful. This can happen.
And it's obtainable.
It's obtainable.
Yes.
360s is not obtainable for a normal person.
No,
even for those top sportsman cars we're talking about. I feel like the difference for those guys is, just from the ones I know, they have a combination. They've got a package that hauls ass and is at the top of the field, and it's not tearing up their stuff. They're not having to work all night, and they can grill out, hang out, bring the family, and have a good time and enjoy their weekend. Correct. Which I think a lot of people at PDRA value more than maybe we talk about or realize, or compared to a lot of other series, rather than, man, always chasing that next level and got to go up to pro nitrous, and then they've got the heads off every run, and all of a sudden it's not fun, versus what they know they can compete and make it kind of a driver's game, and sort of get invested in that, versus everything that stepping up entails. And I think that happens a lot in PDRA, and the environment kind of fosters that.
Do you have a target? I don't want to, I know we've got a lot to cover, guys, but I do think you'll agree this is a very good conversation. Is there like a target ET that you keep in mind, yourself, John Sears, and the rest of the brain trust there at PDRA Tyler, for Pro Outlaw 632, where you go, okay, if they get any closer to this number, we're putting weight on everybody or something? Yeah,
we do. And the hardest part of that whole class, and we have this internal discussion all the time, and I'll open it up right here because it's a common fact. And if you look at the class, there's so many cars that run a single 36. Well, you look at,
so for people that don't know, we're talking about a single nitrous system with a 36 jet. It's a fogger, right?
Correct.
But a lot of those are still sheet metal manifold combinations with dual dominators or EFI, but they've got a single fogger system with a 36 jet.
Yep. And then so there's a single system 36 jet, dual system 36 jet, and then there's the NA combination. And we look at that and you go, okay, hey, you've got a dual kit car that's qualified number one. They're running good, blah, blah, blah. You got a single kit combination that's going out and running good, and all that. Well, if you make a move, it's affecting everybody. So, you can't go and say, okay, hey, in Pro Boost, you've got a combination that's fast because it's a lockup. Well, you put 50 pounds in a lockup. Well, we've already done that. So it's very. Do
you think that you're going to have to define? One of the things that I have historically liked about Pro Outlaw 632, but I can really see being a big pain in the ass, is the wide variety of cars. Like, it's not all tube chassis, carbon body. There's like some steel roof and quarter cars that run in their class. There's some cars that run like 10.5Ws in that class. Is that the challenge? Because you may be able to make it tighter, but you can't take a nitrous system away from one of those heavy cars.
Exactly.
Right? It's a tough deal. Is that something that you may have to consider, especially now that there are these other opportunities in PDRA, Pro Street, Super Street, where some of those cars could find themselves? Because if I had to, going back to the A-Fuel example, that's a big factor, is they're all dragsters. They're all built by like the same two chassis guys. You know what I mean? There's so much consistency from combo to combo to combo that it does provide. I wonder if the PDRA, or if you guys would consider, is saying that like, hey, this is a class that's specifically for tube chassis door cars.
And I don't know. I don't think you want to limit yourself on that, because I don't feel like it has enough of a base under it yet. Now,
I agree.
If you had 25 cars in the parking lot at every race, heck yeah, then you can be that way. But right now, I feel like it's still in that growing stage.
I agree with that.
I look at a car that used to run like Nitrous Pro Street at NMCA or Nostalgia Pro Street or something like that. That is, hey, I got a 632. My car's 2,700 pounds. I can throw two kits on this thing, put 75 pounds in a car, and go race. Well, that gives that guy that built a heavy car that may not have a place to race or is only racing a couple times a year or something like that because he doesn't feel like he can be competitive.
I agree.
Because he built a heavy car with a steel roof and quarter or something like that, but it's set for a 1432 or a 1533 or anything like that. You know, a big tire 2,700 pound car kind of doesn't have a home right now in my mind. But
and that's the play in 2022 and for the last few years, a multi-purpose door car like that, 100%. A car that you can race in a lot of places, I think is the answer. And that's exactly what you're talking about. Because that guy with the back half Nova or whatever, he can go run, I'm just throwing stuff out, like Orlando, you know, once a year, and he can go run a couple of drag radial races down in Valdosta, and then he can hang some weight on it and put big tires on it and go run your whole series and compete for points. You know, I mean, that a guy can really get some mileage out of a combination like that. And that's correct. That's a good place to be as a drag racer. I mean, from the investment standpoint, if you got a lot of options in terms of where you can run your car, that's a victory.
Exactly. And face it, there's a lot of guys that are out there that have a back half car that run very good. And half of those cars sometimes work better than an all tube chassis car. But you know, you have to have that door open for somebody to go, I can do that. And if you can,
that's what makes PDRA so awesome.
It's
our little pre-show. We had a little pre-show before you got on here, Wes and Mike, me and JT and Tyler by accident. And we talked about that and me educating Flo on drag racing because that's just not been their niche. And they've really opened their ears and eyeballs and listened to what I have to say about the people and what's happening in there. But the PDRA is bar none. Like, it's not, here's our rules. We don't care if you come and play or not. It's how can we make this work for the people that we want to return back each week. And I think that just goes back to talk about the longevity of it.
And you need somebody like you there. We talked about this when we had you on last time, advocating and sort of knowing, being embedded in what goes on in that series, and then bringing that to Flo and bringing that knowledge. That's going to help the whole relationship a ton.
Yep. Just knowing what they need.
Yep.
Yes, exactly. Because then you have a voice in somebody that's on the grounds that says, hey, this is a good story. Or the Alan Drinkwater deal. Perfect car, came out of it's an awesome story that if somebody doesn't tell it, nobody knows. And
I mean, he's winning on hole shots. He's got
and we all know that. and that's that's where we all struggle as promoters, as series directors, as Wes, media outlets, all of us, is we don't have that television outlet like some do. We don't have that TV camera that's going in the garage and shows Murder Nova's 55 Chevy in the background when he's working on his Chevy 2 or when he's working on his Nova getting ready for a race. We don't have that outlet of having television, and getting that out to a general motorsports fan is so hard. But being able to work that through Flo and work that through DI, we'll all slowly get there. It may not be as fast as we wanted to get there. But that's the biggest story, is being able to tell that story, and people have to be open to that. And
yes, and you have to help. Like you're
exactly.
One of my favorite promoters to work with, because you and I can talk till midnight and figure out what you want out of it, the story that you want to tell for that. Victor's another good one, but when it's just kind of send the press release, go, Flo, come and do this live streaming, it's like, okay, we can watch race cars go down the racetrack all we want, but that's why I put posts out like I did the other day. Like, I want to know the things that I don't know. I want to know, like, the struggles. I want to know the cool stuff, the family stuff, and our sport. And this is, again, not what you brought me on here to say, but we will never be that top notch, that F1, that NASCAR, until we forget about the cars and stuff for a minute and let the characters tell the story, and let the characters allow us to fall in love with these cars, and then learn about the combinations. Hearing you say things like those to a non-drag racing fan, somebody who just wanted to watch the stars, hearing what we just talked about with all these combinations, that's scary. I log out, right? Like, you're not even going to do it. So flipping the script and Flo being, this is not an advocate for all of it. I wouldn't have given up the keys to my castle if I didn't believe in all this crap I'm doing, but they are invested in that, and having you be able to help us. And coming into the race this weekend, like, from an hour conversation, we have a plan. We have a way to tell the people what we want to tell them. And PSA to the other promoters.
I was going to say, because we
you.
almost always find a way to turn this into like educational programming, and I'm cool with it, you know, because I'm a big believer in like continued education. Like I'm always, they make fun of me. JT specifically makes fun of me for reading books. It's mainly because he's jealous he can't read, you know, and I get how sensitive he is about it.
He's not even here
to
defend himself.
He's super sensitive about it, you know, and I get it. I don't try to rub it in his face, but I do read all the time, and it's not because I'm like, I don't know, like bored. I want to be learning.
Because you're a nerd.
Okay.
I was say, where's JT? He's got to come in.
I knew he was coming, but I appreciate that we've got to be progressing and we've got to be getting better. And I hope people hear what y'all are saying, because I agree 100%. I mean, even on the Drag Illustrated side, it's so nice to work with promoters that have at least appreciate the storytelling aspect and are going, hey, here's a couple of things that we're paying attention to, or here's a couple of things that we've seen kind of developing over the course of the season. And it's tough because a lot of promoters and you know, race operators, or however you want to describe yourself, or whatever job title you want to give yourself, I think the ultimate goal is for people to care. And telling us about track prep or telling us about how hard you worked parking cars or whatever, that ain't the play, right? I mean, that's like an expectation. The track should be good. Exactly. The trucks and trailers should be parked. The place should be clean. Like none of that's expected. It's a given. So what can we do to go beyond that and get, like you said, Courtney, even people that are struggling? I think that those are some of the most relatable, exciting stories, is a come from behind or overcoming obstacles or despite all odds stories. And a lot of people in the pits, they're hesitant to get vocal until they're stacking up trophies and stacking up those white time slips. And it's like, hey man, the best stories are typically on the back of a stack this high of yellow time slips.
Yes.
You know, the grit and the claw.
Well, it's the story that you can tell all year long. You know, we talk about that looking at all racers. And the first one that pops in my mind is Brian Kloss. Had a gorgeous 67 Chevy 2 that he drove for me, Baldwin, in 632. Sold the car in the off season, bought a 69 Camaro from Donnie Urban, bought Donnie Urban's old car, put his motor in it, and they've been clawing and fighting and testing and going out and really making some good laps, but not where they wanted to be yet. But they're not scared to tell the story. They're not scared to post it on Facebook. You know, they came out at Maryland in the middle of the day and went one flat and went their personal best. And it's like, you know, that's the story that people can relate to, because every one of us have been at a bracket race or at a test and tune or whatever, and been laying underneath the car. Man, change the converter for the fourth time trying to get the right thing. But when you finally get it, it's sweeter. Like the greatest feeling ever, because you know you had to earn it.
And there's probably somebody that's beating their head against the wall that will order another converter because they, you know what I mean, or be pushed or inspired to make that move or do that extra work or go to that extra test session because they saw you having success with it. And I think there's there's a lot of us that are guilty of setting the bar so high with some of this stuff and some of the content. Like, it doesn't have to be a cover story. It doesn't have to be a 15-minute, you know, highly produced Corey Mahalik done video. Like, there's a place for those and they're great. I challenge people all the time, dude, just document. Yeah. Don't even worry about an intro. Don't worry about, don't create content. Just document what you're doing. Take videos.
That's what I said. I said, just text me.
You
don't have to send me a press release. Just text me. Tell me something that's going on and we'll come over.
Just document it. You just document what you're doing. Like, if you go test, take a video, have your wife do it, have somebody do it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to have the burnout to the music, or, you know what I mean? It doesn't have to have a checkered flag waving in the background or perfect composition. Just document what you're doing. And you would be surprised. People will latch onto it over time. Let's talk a little bit. Actually, before we do, let's pay some bills real quick. I'd like to take a minute to remind everybody that the Wes Buck Show is brought to you by our friends at Redline Synthetic Oils. Redline has a reputation with racers and hardcore enthusiasts for creating products that perform and protect better than any on the market, and they've been doing it since 1979. Whether it's your race car, your tow rig, your motorcycle, or your lawnmower, when you think about lubricants, you need to think about our friends at Redline. For more information, log on to redlineoil.com. That's redlineoil.com. Guys, before we cut you loose, and I know you both have busy days today, but let's talk a little bit about your marquee categories there within the PDRA. Let's start with Pro Boost. We will dive into Pro Nitrous and Extreme Pro Stock. We're going to have to move quickly, guys. Todd Tutterow, Kurt Stedding, that whole P2 operation have been world beaters here to start the season, kind of continuing on a tradition that was started with the Galat Motorsports team of utter domination in the Pro Boost ranks. Let's talk about that a little bit. What do you make of this early dominance from Todd Tutterow and company? Tyler?
Todd Tutterow started the year with 2 back-to-back wins, and then goes to semi, and then goes a second-round loss at Maryland. So are we seeing a slide, or are we just, are we in mid-season slump, or are we just coming up on the wrong side?
Put his other car in the winner's circle?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was just going to say, let's let him tune a minute.
So the coolest part is, and I pulled the point standings up as I knew we were going to get to this conversation. When you look at the top 6 in points, there's 6 rounds that separate the top 6, and there's a screw blower, a roots blower, a pro charger, a screw, another pro charger, and another screw. So the combinations are close. We've got a lot of work to do with the PDRA just to keep it that way, to make this to where this is a place to come race when you have a pro mod. If you have a pro modified car and you're wanting to run 8th mile drag racing, you should say, I'm going to the PDRA 100% without a doubt. And part of that's because of the cars being as close as they are, keeping the combinations as close as we can, and giving you that platform to showcase your talents on. And
Courtney,
Todd Tutterow has been doing that.
Courtney, how crazy is it when you look at those championship point standings that you were just talking about, Tyler? All these kind of fresh faces. Robert Gallegos, 3rd. Preston Tanner in his debut season. Right? I mean, and it's not a ton. Scott Wildgust, Bob Glenn. I mean, the top 10, there are some fresh faces throughout there. Is that encouraging? Like, just on the 30,000-foot view, it's nice to see some new folks join the cast of usual suspects, right?
It is. And I want to touch on what you said, too, about is this sheer domination. We also cannot forget about my girl, Melanie, because that girl has been flying. And although she has not been in the winner's circle and it seems like it's a King Tut show here, that girl it's happenstantial. It's just not been able to put it together on Saturday. And I think that the points, there's 240 points difference. I think that is, I know you guys have a tight racing season. Johnny Placino always tells me my whole season's the countdown. So we're in the countdown already because you guys only have the 8 races. But that girl, I feel like that's one that's going to sneak up and bite people right in the butt.
She's arguably got the baddest blown, pro mod in the country, right? I mean,
she's qualified number 1 and everywhere she goes.
Roots car too.
A roots car too. Really, really impressive. Those 350 runs at Galat in Benson, North Carolina, there to start the season, those felt titanic. I mean, it just felt big and powerful, but it is interesting. I think you may be right, Courtney. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see that team sneak up and bite some folks. And it's also like there's a slew of these usual suspects, the Johnny Camps, the Randy Weatherfords that are this close. Like just anything goes their way, they're in the winner's circle.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up Melanie, because you look at the last race with Melanie. She got beat by Kurt Stedding. They both went 361.
Right. Yeah, they're not doing a good job.
Yeah,
it's just not coming together.
We get through first round at every race, and the ladder. I print the ladder out of the CompuLink system for second round, and you look at it, you go, "Well, can't pick that one. All right, on to the next one," because there's so many. The racing is so close in that class. It doesn't matter who you pull up beside. If you come up bringing, I got just an A to B tune-up in it, well, you might want to make sure the lift gate's plugged up because you might be dropping it after first because it is cutthroat right now. And it's great racing, but it's, for people that don't come race or haven't been to a PDRA race, from the outside looking in, you look at that and you go, man, I don't know if I can do that. But when you race at that level and you race with the people that you are, with Todd Tutterow, with Melanie and John Salemi and Robert Gallegos, Preston Tanner in his year, and when you get in that feel, it's you step your game up. You learn things by watching those cars. Watching the live feed on Flow Racing is great, but when you stand behind Todd Tuttero's car as a competitor and you go, man, Todd's doing something different right there. I wonder if I can try that. Or, Randy Weatherford's trying something different with the way his car's running or anything like that. And to the detailed eye, you can see that. And people, when you race with people that are at this level, you step your game up even if you don't change anything. You either, you might be 50 on the tree at some other races, but when you come here, you're probably 20. Because
if you think, 011, that round of racing perfectly encapsulates the level of competition that exists in the PDRA. My dad and I have big discussions about this because he's just he every drag race that he has gone to since first going to a PDRA race, he weighs against that. And I told him, I said, you're not really allowed to do that, Dad, because you've become desensitized, right? Like everybody runs 360s and 70s, like the slow cars run 70s, right? And it's hard because if you go to any other drag strip on the planet, there's a dozen top sportsman cars in the PDRA that you could take to local pro mod shootouts across the country
and
set records and dominate. You know what I mean? And that is really hard because, again, Melanie Slemmy, Kurt Stedding, semifinal round, go 361 to 361, 011 light to an 029. You really can't
get better than
create a better drag race than that, right?
Exactly.
But for some reason, we're all way too lackadaisical about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, hey, that happened again.
Yeah, we've got to be screaming about this stuff because I'm sitting here looking at like the qualifying order from Maryland, and it was a little bit down on some cars traveling way up north, right? Nothing that you weren't anticipating. 14 Pro Boost cars. I'm almost going, I'd cap that bad boy at 16 and say that these are our invites. You know what I mean? And no one else is allowed because these are the baddest door cars on the planet Earth. And that, I don't know, that exclusivity, because these, you nailed it. And there's been a couple of moments throughout drag racing history where I've felt it was important to remind people what they're a part of. I think about some really crazy qualified fields in NHRA Pro Mod where the bump's like a 75 or something, a 575 in the quarter mile. And you're going, I felt the need to like walk through the staging lanes before first round and say, hey, you need to be happy that you're here.
This is cool.
The fact that you're here, I got goosebumps. The fact that you're a member of this group of people is a big deal. So no matter what happens in the next 30 minutes, win, lose, or draw, you are a part of the most elite door slammer field that's ever been assembled. And it's crazy because PDRA does it 8 times a year, 10 times a year, week in and week out. And I just think we have to get this animated about it because people get mad at me, but you can't take any cars from any other walk, truly, of the door slammer drag racing life and put them in this field and have them immediately be successful. They're going to get crushed for a long time before they get to that PDRA Pro Boost or Pro Nitrous level. Sorry, I got on a little bit of a tirade there, but I truly believe it, man.
But and on the point of, like you said, where it's like, hey, this is a capped field and stuff like that, that's where this Pro Stars program comes into play. And I know, Mike, we had touched on that some in some other conversations, but that's where we're really getting unique away from any other series. You support the series all year long. You come out and race as much as you can, earn points. And this is not a performance-based program. You get more points for showing up than you get for going rounds. And that's where this is special, because if you put in the hard work and the time and the efforts and the money to travel and be at all these races, you deserve something special. And that's something that we've really tried to push on. The first year was way better than expected. I'll be honest. I really felt like people were going to say, "Oh, it's
why don't you real quick introduce those that maybe aren't familiar?" We have a ton of people that watch this show from the no prep world or from the NHRA kind of buttoned up pro level deal. A lot of sportsman racers. Could you? I actually pulled up your Facebook post, Tyler, because I thought it was so well said, but now it's gone. You made a post a couple of days ago. Tell me what other race series. Tell us about the Pro Stars, the Summit Racing Equipment Pro Stars, so that people know what's going on.
Yeah, so it's a one-off show basically. I'm going to steal this from the Bader family. This is a race where it's an entertainment value. We pair this with our Night of Fire here at Virginia. We were sitting here 2 years ago, Tommy and I were, and we said, we're paying a lot of money for people to come in and put on a show, and these PDRA racers are putting on a show every weekend. Why don't we do something special for them? Well, then that just kind of spiraled into what this program has become. And basically for all 8 races of the year, you gain Pro Stars points, but we don't do it in a calendar year. This weekend at Virginia is the last chance to earn Pro Stars points. It's the 8th race of the Pro Stars standings. So we start those every year at Maple Grove, and then we continue those on until the first Virginia race here in the summer. So you get 8 shots at it. So it's the last 3 races of 2021 and the first 5 races of 2022 to gain those points. Like we said, you get 40 points for showing up and making it on the qualifying sheet, whether you qualify or not. And then you get 10 points for each round win. If you're in a heads-up class, you get a bonus point if you win on a hole shot. And if you're in a sportsman category, you get 1 bonus point if you run dead on your dial in or your index. Something special, kind of a tiebreaker if we needed it. But a hole shot win is something that you need to be rewarded on. You earn that as a driver. Same thing on a sportsman category. If you go down there and you drop it dead on, that's a feat. That's an accomplishment. And that's something that makes that program unique, because you're not doing that in a championship standpoint. You're not going in and rewarding somebody for winning on a hole shot as they're chasing a year-long championship. And to be able to bring that to Pro Stars is just unique. We'll have 88 cars here for that event. There'll be 8 cars from Pro Nitrous, Pro Boost, Pro Stock, 632, Elite Top Sportsman, Elite Top Dragster, Top Sportsman, Top Dragster, the regular fields, and then Pro Junior and Top Junior.
That's badass, man. I mean, if you think about all those guys are able to race for big money, no entry fee.
Well, they're able to race this weekend, possibly, and then park their rigs there for the next 2 weeks until that event, which is something that PDRA does. We saw posts a couple months ago about the schedule, I guess the way the travel schedule was working out, and you guys offered for rigs to be parked at VMP to help guys out. And I think that's a huge deal. And it may be the only remaining standalone exhibition shootout, big money event that runs alongside a touring series. We used to have, the Winston Invitational, Big Bud Shootout, all these things. And any shootouts we get now tend to be lumped in during an event. But this really stands on its own as a separate event, which when you first with the economy, fuel prices, with the current state of everything, when you first announced this, I was like, I really hope everyone supports this, because we need this, and I think this is badass. But this could be a little bit of an uphill battle. So to hear you say it was successful in the first year, and you guys are building on it and are going to keep after it, we talked about it on this show, I believe, when we first heard about Pro Stars. Is I hope that this is something that forms a good foundation that we can see for years to come, because I think the sport needs more things like this.
Look at this. I'm looking at the purses right now. You got it's a 1-day race. So when I first heard it, we talked about it, Flo, like, do we spend the time and dollars to send somebody out there for 1 day? Like, it costs a lot of money to go somewhere now. $10,000 to win for Pro Stock. Let's talk like NHRA. Apples. $15,000 to win Pro Nitrous and Pro Boost. $2,000 to win for junior dragsters. I've seen girls. That's crazy. I've seen people holding checks, little kids holding checks for $25 because they were so pumped that they went to the tower and got a check.
Or an Arby's gift card.
Comma in it. That is a comma in it. Yep. That's crazy.
And this was our entire goal with this. Number one, you want to make it attractive enough that somebody wants to chase this. You tell a Pro Nitrous Pro Boost guy, hey, look, we want you to come run this deal. We're going to give you a test session on Friday. We're going to run into Friday night a little bit. And then Saturday, you get one shakedown.
And
we're drawing chips. You're not going on a qualifying sheet. You're not getting on a ladder. We're going to draw chips. It's going to be completely random. And then we're going racing. And you turn on 3 win lights and you take home $15,000. You're telling me you're not doing that? And that's we had to make this, and this is the good part of having Tommy in the back corner, is you have that racer that goes, hell yeah, I'd do that. All right, we're on the right point. And I look at things as a racer way too often. And this is one that I'm taking the fan as number one in this show. This is a show. This is not a drag race. Night of Fire, Pro Stars. This is your chance to get that schedule, to do the autograph sessions, to be a part of a driver introductions.
I'm coming to see Adam Doliak. I'm coming for the country.
And we also added
out.
a concert. So yeah, we have 3 country music artists that are adding in. That's new for this year. So we're putting on a full-blown concert 3 times with PJ North, Adam Doliak, and then John Langston's going to headline with 3 big-name country music artists. And you have to make this to where people show up for, hey, we're coming to watch the concerts. Hey, we're coming to watch.
They want it all. Yeah.
Wheel standers, nostalgia funny car match race, fireworks, pyrotechnics. And then you go, hey, what's this badass thing? And then if you make a fan go, hey, wasn't this PDRA thing that they're advertising for in October for the World Finals? Wasn't that race that we went to in July?
I was going to say, because what I see in it is a marketing exercise.
100%.
You're putting on a show for sure, but you're putting the PDRA's best foot forward to hopefully a group of non-black t-shirt wearing fans. Right? I mean, fans that don't have Proline shirts or don't have Rear Morrison shirts, right? No. But like, we're the hardcores. We're all wearing black t-shirts, but we're going
Mine
to the
is
PDRA
a dress.
race.
I'm wearing a dress today for the record.
Oh, okay. Well, Mike's got his Drink Hard shirt on.
Shout out Drink Hard guys.
Shout out to our boys at Drink Hard Racing. But no,
Rick,
I mean, I think
feel
it's
like
a
you've
great.
said this before. You've said like you want to have a race when we were putting on your race. You want to put on a race where people would say, "Shit, I missed it. I can't believe I wasn't there."
Yeah, and I really think that you hit the nail on the head with like the other stuff, because we oftentimes lose sight of the fact that each one of these racetracks are an open air bar and grill, right? I mean, it's a concert venue, it's an entertainment venue, and you've got to put on a hell of a show and throw a party, because people, you got to create an atmosphere that's
the expectation.
That's the expectation today.
That really is.
You know, like, hey, I don't want to, I mean, something epic could happen. You know, I don't want to be the one guy that didn't go. The whole world's going to be there. And you have to create that. And it's funny because oftentimes, and this is a friend of mine, a great guy, Craig Shorten, back in Kirksville, Missouri, used to always talk about, he's a bar owner, very successful bar owner, been in business a long time. And he would always talk about how you have to let people know that you're throwing a party and you don't care if they come or not.
Yeah.
Because when you start begging them and when you start making them feel like, oh, well, we're not going to have a party if you don't come, you start planting these seeds subconsciously where they're like, man, you know what? Maybe I won't go.
That's not too cool.
Maybe I won't go, you know, or whatever.
I'm shocked you brought up a bar in Kirksville, Missouri. JT didn't slide in here. If there's ever been a segue for JT.
He's on a drink break.
Yeah, here he comes. Break. Here he comes. 3, 2, 1. Oh, he's not going to show up.
I'm here, man.
It's so true, though, right? I mean, because hey, we're throwing a party. Don't care if you come or not. It's going to be the biggest party. It's going to be the most fun you could have drag racing, or most fun you can have in Kirksville, Missouri, or wherever you may roam. But the moment you change the psychology and start like trying to convince them, that you've lost.
It's hard to do though, because when you're planning something like that, you're constantly right before it happens. I mean, this happens. I don't care if you're doing a dinner party for somebody, you know, or
you start to worry that no one's going to come.
You're like, where is everybody? You know,
we do that every year at the DI party. You have this moment.
It happens whatever party you're putting on.
Then there's too many people there.
You're putting on. Yeah, and the next thing you know, you're like, why the hell was I even worried about it? You know?
Yeah, you know, and it's it is funny though, because you do. I mean, for years and years, we've thrown the PRI party, the DI party at the Performance Racing Industry Trade Show in Indianapolis. And you're right, Mike. Like we sit there right before
because we get there
off
early.
And we're like,
yeah.
You think anybody's going to come? And then the next minute I'm fighting with the fire marshal, you know what I mean? And it's, you know, so, but you do, and I feel like we've done a good job with that. We're throwing a big party. Yeah. Don't care if you come or not, because everybody's going to be there, you know, and that doesn't mean you're not going to have nerves, but you have to treat it that way.
You have to feel that way, because if you don't, then you're not putting enough care into it, that you're not going to put on a good enough show that people want to attend. So if you don't have that fear, I don't feel like you're doing enough justice to the event or to the people that are coming to support you in general.
I have a 100%. Confession to make. It was up to me, and we're still deciding what we're going to do, if I'm going to be going to Pro Stars or not. I put in my vote. They asked me my vote, and there's an NHRA race, and I voted Pro Stars.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
I picked that over an elite race.
Well, hey, man, I just think that
because it is an elite race.
Yeah, it is.
Well, I meant elite like Erica, like this broad.
No, wait, you said you turned in the keys.
You turned over the keys. Yeah.
Yep.
They changed the locks on you. No, I'm just
Exactly.
joking.
I had to give Woody access to all the socials today, and I felt like I was fired again.
Again, it's happened again. They've taken my Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram away. Sons of guns. Real quick, guys, before we cut you loose, let's just touch on Pro Nitrous. No secret, Mike and I, kind of big time nitrous guys. We're big fans of the class. I think there's some great characters there, some great storylines. We've obviously got a killer championship battle going on. Jim Halsey maintaining his station in the sport, station at the top of the mountain. Mike argues that he's a top 5 pro mod racer of all time. I think he may well be. I think I may have messed that up. I mean, what's your take, Tyler, on the PDRA Pro Nitrous division at this point in time?
It's a tough class.
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult at times because you sit there and you go, man, how can we make this racing closer? Like, because with Pro Boost, you go, oh well, the Pro Charger needs weight, or you take weight off, or the screw needs more blower, or it doesn't need enough, or it needs to take some away. With nitrous, it's like, well, you can't walk in the pits and go, hey, you can have a 940 cubic inch motor, but you can have a 959. So the rules are very open, but they fit everybody in the same hole. So that's where Nitrous Wars comes into play, where we have a good time with the engine builders and really kind of make a little rivalry between them, where Pat Musey's actually carrying that right now, with Tommy having the most number 1 qualifiers, with 3 actually, 2 with him and then 1 with Buddy Perkinson in the car at Maryland after Tommy's little accident. But Halsey and that crew, they have been the class of the field. And I'm not going to say that that's happened all year. Early in the year, I said Mike Achenbach was going to be the newcomer.
Well, and it looked like they let the door was open momentarily.
It was.
Now they've got a 400 some odd point lead. Not saying that gap can't be closed. I guess, forgive me if I don't know this and it's already news. Will we see Tommy back behind the wheel this weekend, or is that yet to be seen?
We are hoping so.
Okay.
We haven't made a move or anything like that, but we are hoping to see Tommy back behind the wheel.
Because it's still mathematically possible, right?
Correct.
I mean, for him to be right. I mean, he wins a race or two or goes on a little bit of a run.
Yeah.
He could be right back in the thick of things.
It's definitely it's tight at the top. I mean, really in behind Halsey, who's got a 400 point lead. It's pretty tight for the next few cars back there. And like you said, Mike Achenbach jumping up there this year. He's been a bit of a surprise. Always ran strong, but second in points this far into the season. I think that says something. And there may be some news on the horizon with old Mountain Man soon. Yep. So we'll have to keep an eye on that too.
It's that. You got Chris Rainey coming out with a new car,
brand new car.
Just gonna say that.
So I don't think he'll be putting that out this race. I know he's still bringing the other car from that Bryant Mariner and him have paired up on. But you have Halsey that's out front. Achenbach was I'm not going to say the surprise because he ran really good at the end of last year, but after 2 races, he's won and runnered up. And it's like, oh boy, hey, we got to, Jim's going to have his hands full. And then the next 2 races, Mike struggles and goes out first round. So that's really where that spread came from, was Mike having some trouble. And I know, talking to that team, they've made some changes coming into Virginia. Tommy missing a race, being 100 points behind Mike, shows that Tommy's program was coming up the realm and still was, with Buddy behind the wheel. And then you got Rainey, Jay Cox, Jason Harris all crammed together within, those 3 drivers are within 22 points of each other.
That's crazy.
Sitting right there behind the top 3. So Rainey coming off of a really good semifinal race with Halsey. I think both went 68. So performance is not what it was in the years past. Jim has raced very well this year. You take Galad out, where he went out first round. He's been in the final 3 races in a row, won 2 of those, and has made really good decisions behind the wheel. He's been good on the tree, made good qualifying runs, but being able to put pressure on them sometimes kind of tightens things up. So, I look for this weekend to really be the deciding factor of, does Jim Halsey take a commanding lead in Pro Nitrous starting the back half of the year, or does a first or second round exit really tighten things up, and do we see a new face in the winner circle that's not named Halsey or Frank?
Well, I see there's a huge spelling error on your points. Who does your points?
Probably me.
Yeah,
Who did I miss,
it's Jimmy Winlights.
Jimmy
is
Winlights.
what it says is what it's supposed to say there in that.
I was
number one
looking for a
spot.
legit.
I was too.
Yeah.
No, it's supposed to say right there where it says Jim Halsey. It's supposed to say Jimmy Winlights. I mean, I think it's massively impressive. We really did. I know that I think I may have messed up by not including him in my Pro Mod top 5. There's so many guys in that space that have crushed it. But man, Jim is on another level, right? I mean, I'm not. Everybody gets
Especially
up in
what
arms.
he's done in the last few years in
It's
the PDRA.
brutal.
That's why I
You're
put him
looking at 4 in a row.
in my top 5.
You're
It doesn't
looking
even
at,
phase him.
yeah, you're looking at a guy that won 3 championships in a row, like in a row, with the best nitrous racers on the planet. And correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't that the first 5-second driver in the quarter mile
That's
for a
correct.
nitrous pro mod?
And he was a world beater for like.
Where was this?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really incredible what they've been able to do, and the fact that they do it not as the only thing they do. I mean, they run a racetrack. They've got a business. They got that big old farm thing, horse ranch up in Maryland. Like they got their hands
and set out a few years after that 5-second deal. Kind of took a little bit of a back seat. Had a big fire at their shop. Had to come back from that. So it's not someone that's just been out there. He's had multiple segments to his career, which I think is a cool thing to kind of throw in there, in the longevity to where he was good in the early days, in the early 90s. And then he really stepped it up and was a force sort of in the early days of an HRA Pro Mod and IHRA Pro Mod. The first 5-second run sort of, maybe he took a year off or something, then was a force in ADRL, then took a couple years off, went through this other stuff. Now he's a force again in PDRA. And I think that says a lot about.
I think it's also interesting that they've kind of done it their own way.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, obviously it was probably an easy decision for Jim Halsey to make to partner with Gene Fulton and the team at Fulton Competition as a horsepower provider. But like in the current state of nitrous drag racing, that's not necessarily, I mean, the last several years, at least, that's not been the automatic decision, right? I mean, if you're going to dive into PDRA Pro Nitrous or you're going to dive into high-level nitrous racing, I'm going to upset some people or whatever, but you just call Pat Musey, right? And you call Mark Mickey and you get this go-to package. And the fact that when they came back, they still stuck with what they knew and what they wanted to do. He's never been afraid to kind of do it his own way. I remember when everybody had a Bickle car, he had a McCamus car. You know what I mean? Like he's always been, and that's something that we're probably not highlighting enough. You need that, but that kind of loyalty is very rarely displayed in drag racing. Correct. That level of, hey, this is my guy, win, lose, or draw. That's what we're going to do. I mean, we see it all the time. I mean, especially in the cutthroat world of NHRA. Courtney, how many times have you seen people completely abandon ship, blow up relationships, blow up decade-long friendships to go hop on whatever the hot deal is, right? I mean, it happens quite frequently. So to see someone like Jim not only be loyal to the people that he's partnered with since day one, but be successful while doing it, kind of something maybe we could all take a little lesson from that. Like, hey, sometimes maybe it's worth sticking it out, right? I mean, there's a point where I joke that knowing when to quit is a very great trait. Like knowing when enough is enough, but you got to know, and you got to be willing to test the boundaries of that. And I think that Jim, we give him a lot of praise and he deserves it, man. That's a really, really, really cool team, a great group of people that are doing big things. I got to be honest, guys, like if we're going to kind of talk turkey momentarily, ain't nobody derailing that train. Sorry.
I think it's a little poetic, and maybe this is the Wes Buck storyteller in me, but like the fact that he went out first round once, and then we've got Tommy with the thumbs up hand issue. It kind of balanced it and offset it, and it could be a lot worse. That I keep looking at my points. I'm looking at the points. That gap could be a lot worse. Yeah. But also come the end of the year, come the end of y'all's full season countdown, those two races could almost, if Tommy comes back this weekend, offset each other, and it could kind of poetically not matter. That first round loss doesn't matter. Tommy's broken hands doesn't matter, and now we're back to the Halsey Franklin saga.
Which is a good thing. I mean,
it's always a story. You always have, and it's you hate. And this is going to sound really bad because I'm friends with both of them, and I work for one of them. Even it needs that new face. Pro Nitrous needs a new king, and I'm going to be the one to say it.
Or at least somebody to blow on the throne,
But it's hard to write the same story. And all three of you will agree with this. It's hard to write a story when you go, Oh, hey, who won the race last year? I need to put them on the cover photo for this week's event. Oh, it was Halsey. He did it the last race we just had him on. So I got to go to another class. So, and I love those guys and both teams and everything, but new blood shaking up the tree is always pretty good as well. So,
I agree, but I would challenge you to find a way to spin that, because you're right. And I've thought about that a lot. Like, man, we need a fresh face. We need a new cast of characters. But the other way to spin it is Jim Halsey, Jimmy Winlights versus the world. I mean, could it not be argued that, like, hey, Ryan Martin, come try him on? Any of these guys in the, Mark Mickey, any of the heavy hitting street radial tire guys or whatever, like, you want a piece of the baddest dude on the planet? He races 8 times a year with the PDRA, and he's our Mike Tyson. And it was tough there for a long time. I remember we use boxing references all the time and boxing analogies, but there's a lot of them. So, but like Mike Tyson fights used to be over typically in the first round. You know what I mean? Like, you better hope the undercard's good, because Mike's gonna smoke this dude in 40 seconds.
Yeah, but you still watched it.
But you still watched it. And I think that if we, maybe as a group, and maybe this is an offline conversation, but we need to start positioning Jim Halsey, because Jim's not a super outspoken guy, right? So we're going to have to do it. We will have to do it. Jim he'll happily show up and crush everybody, but we're going to need a Vince McMahon to help make him Hulk Hogan or help make him Andre the Giant, right? Because I don't think that there's anybody on the planet with a door car that wants to line up against Jim Halsey.
You always have that fear, 100%.
You don't want to race him. Of all the guys you might have to race, you don't want to race Jim Halsey. Right? Let's start to tell that story. Like, let's start to talk about it more. Let's put him on the cover all the time. Let's make people hate him. Let's make people despise him the way they did John Force during his reign of terror, right? With the way people feel about Erica Enders right now.
I was
like, they want to see anybody win but her. Right. And it's been tough, because it's been hard to see, and we're switching gears here dramatically, but I kind of feel like we've seen a heel turn for Erica. In pro wrestling terminology, she's went a little bit from babyface to heel. And this happens a lot. Hulk Hogan did it, right? He was red, white, and blue, yellow, and red. And then the next thing you know, he's got a black bandana on and he's part of the New World Order, right? And he that's called a heel turn. He went from a baby face to a heel, from a good guy to a bad guy.
She got pissed.
And I'm seeing that in Erica right now. We're getting these kind of curt interviews, and we're kind of getting a little bit more of an edge than we've ever seen from her before. And you're going to have detractors, and she's going to take a beating from somebody on the internet, no matter what she says, right? So may as well lean into it. And that's kind of what I'm seeing her do. And I think maybe we need that kind of an approach. Obviously Jim Halsey's not going to, he's a great guy and he's not going to be short with anyone or whatever, but we need to set him up, right? Courtney, will you stick a microphone in his face? Let's frame it that you're the bad guy. Let's frame it that you're the guy with a target on your back that no one wants to race against, because
he is quite literally number one on my list.
He's
400 point plus.
Yeah. And this is where drag racing, we struggle, right? Because so many of our racers and the most accomplished guys aren't necessarily full-time racers. They have other businesses, they have other endeavors, and it's tough because you deal with a stick and ball athlete. If you're playing for the Texas Rangers, you don't have a sideline gig. All you're doing is throwing a baseball for the Texas Rangers. So you're available to do, there's media availability that's mandatory, and you've got to make yourself available to this writer and that journalist and this outlet and that outlet. We don't have quite as much of that in drag racing, but we can get there over time. I mean, these conversations are about as helpful as any, man. Okay. Well, hey guys, thank you so much. Courtney, I know you're way late. You know what, while you're here, I don't want to put anybody on the spot. But over the weekend, the sport of drag racing lost one of its most beloved characters in Royce Freeman Sr., patriarch of the Elite Motorsports operation, the big papa there, grandpa, as many of us knowingly referred to him. Richard Freeman of Elite Motorsports, Royce Lee Freeman of Elite Motorsports, as well as Robert Freeman. Their father passed away over the weekend, a tragic accident at the ripe old age of 83. Royce lived a full life. But our heart goes out to the entire Elite Motorsports camp, the entire Freeman family. Courtney, you spent as much time with this guy as anybody. Let's touch on that briefly, but real quick, let's have a brief moment of silence and pay our respect to one of the sport's real good guys. Courtney, I don't know if I can get you to do it, but I'm going to smoke a cigar at every drag race I go to for the rest of my life. I decided it yesterday. I told Mike, didn't I?
Yeah.
I mean, every race
Earlier
I go
today.
to,
Yeah.
was it earlier today?
Yeah.
I'm going to smoke a cigar at every drag race I go to until I meet my maker. What a man, eh, Courtney?
Yeah, that if you've ever met Royce Freeman, if you've ever stood outside of our pit for more than 3 seconds, he has come over and told you his life story. He's told you how much he loves that gosh damn Cushman scooter. And just for the world to know, he was a very eclectic man of many, many fun words. But let me tell you, he died doing exactly what he wanted to do. He loved that Cushman motorcycle almost as much as he loved his boys in NHRA drag racing. And if anybody cares, that man went out with his helmet, had a 4-inch purple mohawk on it that he was wearing whenever he crashed. So it was just an unthinkable issue. I think that, I don't want to speak out of turn, but it was a health issue going on that caused kind of a little stumble on the bike. So it wasn't, a horrible crash by any means. But if he would have picked, and I know this because I've heard him say it, I will go to that Cushman rally till I die. And he did that, and it would have been an injustice to his brand, his personality, his tenacity, and his heart if we would have had to wait selfishly until he was 110 years old because he was invincible and watch his body fail. And this was just, it's horrible. I hate I'm going to Oklahoma here in a minute to go be with the Freemans and have his funeral tomorrow. But let me tell you, if he had to pick in a multiple choice question, hands down, this is how it would have been. And I love that man. I love this family. And I'm so sorry. And I hope that anybody who's met him on Elite Motorsports website, there's a spot where you can go pay tribute. And let me tell you, they're reading all of this stuff. They are loving it's what's getting Sharon, his wife, through all of this. They just celebrated, I think, their 60th wedding anniversary. So if you have a fun story of Royce, anything, send it to me, text it to me, message it to us. I have goosies right now. But we would love to hear him because, as we all on this call know, the bank of stories for that man is absolutely endless. And I think that you'd be argued to say that is the most interesting man in the world.
Man, I'll tell you what, very well said, Courtney, and thank you for that. I'll tell you, Royce Sr. subscribed to Drag Illustrated in 2007. He paid for a subscription, and he got to know me through my column in the magazine. And I remember one of the first times I ever met him was at the NHRA National event in Topeka at Heartland Park, Kansas. And anybody who's been there knows it's a sprawling facility. And if you are in a situation where you're hoofing it, you're about to have a real rough weekend. And I was down in the staging lanes. Pro Stock was in the lanes getting ready to run. And Royce hollered at me. And it was a real shocking thing because at that point in time, this would have been probably in 2008, 2009. This has been a long time ago. He said, hey, you're that boy of that magazine, right? And I said, yeah. And he goes, I read that son of a bitch every month, and he, I like that one you wrote about such and such and that one you wrote. And it was amazing. It was one of the first times that I really recognized like the reach of the magazine. Like, here's a guy that I don't know that I know of because he's like part of the Elite Motorsports family. And I certainly knew who he was and the position he kind of held in our sport. Right. And the fact that he had gotten to know me by reading my words in a magazine was a really powerful thing for me. But it was interesting because here's this guy, race Pro Stock. His kids run arguably one of the most successful Pro Stock teams in history. And he subscribes to my magazine. He paid for it. He didn't get on a comp list or he didn't, buy a bunch of ads so he gets them for free. I mean, he's paid to subscribe to the magazine. We mailed it to his house. And anyways, we were exchanging stories and talking momentarily, and the round gets over and we stood on the starting line together. We were talking and whatnot because, he makes everybody feel like you're his
best friend,
best friend in the world, love you, arm wrapped around you, the whole bit. And we're standing there and I go, all right, well, I'll catch up with you later. I'm going to start walking now, and he's like, we ain't walking. And I'm like, well, you might not be, but I am, and he's like, nope, I'll throw somebody off. And I mean, he literally insisted that I got a ride back to the pits with him, because he didn't want to see me have to walk all over Heartland Park, Topeka. And that was before I'd met anybody else in the Freeman camp. It was Royce Sr. And he was always nice to me. He always made time for me, always quick to offer a cigar or offer a joke or a funny story. And there's lessons to be learned from men like that. Like you can go a long way in life by treating people well. And he is a picture perfect example of that. And I'm going to miss the hell out of him. It is not going to be the same going to the drag races and not seeing him.
I would be remiss to say, as we talk so kindly about him, I would be remiss to say that he would be ashamed that we haven't touched on what an ornery asshole he could be at times too. And we loved him for it. Because I just want to say, and I say that with all the love in the world, because I told it to his face. Wes, we talked about it in the pre-show. One of my favorite moments
can I
ever.
say this? Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Erica gets beat on a hole shot. And he legit walked off the starting line. And so sorry, Flow Racing and God and everyone else. But he said, that's a no driving bitch. Who can say that?
Her, probably. I was going to say that story because I've seen him. He literally grabbed me by the shoulders one time. Erica had unfortunately lost on a hole shot. And he grabbed me by the arm. He goes, God, she is the non-driving son of a bitch I have ever seen. And I said, yeah, Royce, maybe I take the bad with the good because she wins all the time.
Did you forget
if somebody went red? If somebody went red or something, no shit, he would just and walk off the starting line.
I've seen him take off walking when he knew they were late. He just turns around and walks off, heads to the golf cart. Don't even wait.
I love it. And I don't mean any of that. Some people who didn't know him or don't know me may think that was me speaking poorly. But can't you see him saying, why is everybody saying all the nice shit? Like, let's go. I'd shoot that guy out. I told him to get this, So that's
I've seen him. Oh my God. We were in the stands somewhere and he always had a cigar, and he had this cigar lit up and smoking this cigar. And we walk up through the stands because he wants to go sit in the stands. And some guy complains about Royce's cigar smoke. Royce ready to fight. You know what I mean? It's immediately like, I don't think you're big enough to tell me what to do. And I'm like,
in Dallas.
We are going to get in a fight.
He was a part of our Elite Motorsports brawl in Dallas last year. 83 years old.
Why does that not surprise me?
Yeah, this is not shocking at all.
Not shocked.
Apple doesn't fall far from the tree, as they say.
The sport of drag racing will not be the same. Courtney, I'll see you tomorrow at the services. Tyler, thank you so much for the time, buddy. Best of luck this weekend. It's going to be a barn burner. I can feel it. I can feel it in my soul.
Thursday,
and we'll talk to you all soon. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it. See y'all this weekend.
Mike, buddy, we've got a little bit left to go here. We're at about a minute and 45 or an hour 45. We don't need to go too much longer. Let's throw JT in the mix here and let's do a little vintage 15-minute after hour, right? I got a couple of texts last week. What happened to after hours? What happened to? I don't have a cocktail on me, but let's just shoot the shit for a few minutes.
Well, we've got something. I think something's come across the wire during the show that we can talk about. That's interesting. NHRA announced that the first 4 races of 2023, they've revealed the order of them. And basically the season is starting in Gainesville. March 9th, the traditional weekend for Gainesville, March 9th through the 12th will be the opening race. Then they go to Phoenix, then they go to Pomona, and then they go to Vegas. And we talked about how is the schedule going to look differently. We heard that Pomona was not going to be the opening race of the season. But looking at this, and there's a quote even in here from Glenn Cromwell saying, we're excited to release these dates for the first 4 events of 2023. We're looking forward to starting a great season in Gainesville. By starting our year in Gainesville, then moving out west for 3 races, we're able to provide more efficient routing and travel plans for our teams in the entire NHRA series. And I think that's a smart move. And I'm glad to see NHRA do this. And that especially I think
this is the type
coming off
of
the
stuff,
schedule
guys.
in the near
this
future.
This is the type of stuff that pays dividends over time. Are they going to gain 70 racers to start next? No, but these are the type of racer-centric, partner-centric decisions that win people over the course of time, right? I mean, when you see them them being NHRA, when a racer sees the NHRA making a decision that behooves them, the racer, it makes a lot easier to kind of fall in and pledge your support, man. I mean, that is a fantastic thing. I'm genuinely surprised because I was kind of under the impression that we may see that Pomona Winter Nationals go away in its entirety and there be a single California stop or a single Southern California stop on the tour. So we've got the NHRA kicking off their schedule. Wow, the second weekend in March, 9th through 12th in Gainesville, Florida. Let's touch on that briefly. There's not for me, that's the race. Like the U.S. Nationals is special for sure. I've lamented that for years right here on this very program, but there's something about the Gator Nationals, the buy-in from the locals, the route to the track, the facility itself, the passion and enthusiasm of the fan base there, the history, the conditions. You're at sea level early in the season. You're going to go fast. It's all of that early season momentum still exists. I mean, how much bigger is this going to make the Gator Nationals, you guys?
I think it's going to obviously increase the notoriety of that event. We always call it the East Coast opener, and now we can just call it the opener. And it's always been the first big race of the year, in my opinion. Nothing against Pomona, nothing against Phoenix, but it's the first race where the largest majority of your racers can attend, and you have literally every class that I think NHRA has is in attendance there. So it really is a huge event, and I'm excited to kind of see that event take another a step up to the next level in 2023.
Well, I'm interested. What isn't there news? Like it's a well-known fact that Phoenix is going away, right, guys?
I think after this year, I think this is the last year.
This is last year, yes.
And so maybe this is a move looking to the future. I don't know how it will look.
Didn't you say Phoenix is on here?
But Phoenix is 2 weeks after Gainesville. It goes March 9th through 12th.
This is the last year for it, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the last year.
No, yeah. That schedule there will be the last time.
Well,
it'll be the last stop that they make there. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So it'll be even more interesting to see what happens after that, because the series typically would go to Houston, which is also gone.
Yep.
Right. So there's some real interesting things here, because what do? I mean, it's going to look something to the effect of the Gator Nationals in Florida, head out west. When Phoenix goes away, you're going to have Vegas and Pomona, I guess. But would there be a third stop that makes sense? Not really. Right.
Well, we've talked about
something in there somewhere.
It's got to be a race out west somewhere in that area. We've talked about where could NHRA go to replace some of these tracks that they're losing, and
that points to Tucson. In my opinion, that really points heavily to Tucson, because it's going to take Tulsa out. Well, you kind of forget how Midwest Tulsa is, right? But I think it kind of takes Tulsa out of the equation. A lot of the other tracks that we've talked about here are, Chicago centrally located. That doesn't make sense. More East Coast than centrally located, to be honest. So I really think that, reading the tea leaves here, a guy's got to think the smart money. If an event gets added at a new track, I think everything is pointing towards Tucson Dragway in Arizona.
Some more tidbits from this release. The Pet Boys call out for Top Fuel is going to be there again. So the first race of the season, we're going to have the call out. They say all 4 professional categories: Top Fuel, Funny Car, Pro Stock, and Pro Stock Motorcycle. But there's no mention of Pro Mod or obviously.
I got to be honest, I don't like that. I don't think the call out. There was no one on our team that was more excited about the Pet Boys All-Star call out than JT. Don't you think that's a little bit of a misstep, if we're being honest, to have it that before any storylines or any animosity has been developed?
I think you have to get that started first, right? Before you have the call outs. And
I think,
there's kind of just got to carry over from last year.
Yeah, I think wouldn't they be smarter to move that to Vegas or give yourselves 3, 4, 5 races to get some shit popping off?
Has to be something with the track or Pet Boys.
I don't know where they're based in that area, to be honest. Yeah. Maybe that market's especially valuable to them. However, we're giving NHRA kudos here. They are guilty at times of doing what they've always done, so I do wonder if that's something that gets moved or changed, because I think you're going to have all this energy and enthusiasm around the date change. The Gators are already a big deal. Now it's the first race of the freaking season. You're gonna have everything you need for that event to be a barn burner drink.
What do you think
right?
about?
But everything's there. You don't need the call out. I would say that for an event where you need it, right? Like Vegas, when you go there twice and the first race kind of feels like less significant than the second race, or put it somewhere where you could really blow it out, because I think you're honestly, it's like when you've got a fire burning, like let's save some brush. You know what I mean? Like it's burning.
If it's don't broke, don't fix it, right? Like you don't really need to add or change anything until you have a problem, correct?
And another interesting thing is that by starting in Gainesville with the traditional date, you're essentially adding 3 weeks to the off season,
which I think will be massively well received.
That's another move maybe by NHRA and a cost saving, stress measure because Pomona always sneaks up on us like early to mid February.
Dude,
like
it's Valentine's Day
frozen.
And everybody's headed to California to start racing, and it's like, well, I just picked up all this shit from Christmas. You know what I mean? And now we got to go across the country to start the race season, and then it's pretty hot and heavy from there on out. So I think that this is going to be well received. I love seeing the NHRA make racer-centric decisions. I do think racer-centric decisions can get you in trouble. I've seen it where you let the inmates run the asylum, right?
But this makes sense, though.
But this makes sense. And doing anything to ease the burden of the race team, the pro level race team, I think has to be well received at this point in time, right? I mean, anything that can be done in regards to reducing some of those line items, which we've heard from a multitude of team owners, all point at diesel fuel and travel expenses as being one of the most significant parts, the significant
flights,
things that eat up their budgets.
Fuel have got to be the big three.
Yeah, it's a really, really, really incredible thing. What do you guys make of, speaking of Top Fuel and pro level drag racing, there's some pretty seismic news earlier this week. It was done in kind of a underground way. Well-known track promoter and event promoter Andy Carter, formerly of Texas, the legendary Texas Motorplex down here in my neck of the woods, made a post on Facebook, interesting, with a couple of pictures, 2 Top Fuel cars, one being Scott Palmer's, the other being Greg Carrillo's. 2 Top Fuel cars, and said that there'd been some words exchanged and some money had been wagered over who would win in a match race. And the next thing you know, we've got it basically officially announced that they're going to do a Top Fuel match race at the next stop on the No Prep Kings season tour in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that second weekend in August. There's a lot to take away from this, but I'm just curious, like, give me there's one of my favorite old sports shows with Dan Le Batard. They were doing like, are you going to watch it or not? Is this something you're going to watch? Is this something you're going to pay attention to? JT, you go first.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We actually talked about this like a month and a half ago, that we'd like to see this and maybe get some of the crossover from these guys that are following the Street Outlaws. And if they could see these Top Fuelers or something, or get some exhibitions, done at these tracks in front of these big crowds, maybe we'll get some crossover into, the more hardcore drag racing. And I think it's great. And we talked about it quite a bit there about a month and a half ago. Maybe Andy was listening, huh?
He might have been. Well, and it's Mike, what's your take on it? Does it like pique your curiosity whatsoever?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they execute it. But I think it can be something. It's almost like having a jet car or having a wheel stander. Whereas as long as you make it clear this is just a one-time exhibition deal, and don't tarnish the performance of the main show, comparing and contrasting how fast these Top Fuel cars are to the door cars, I think it can be successful and add a little something to the show. But at the bottom line, I don't fault them for trying something new and seeing if it works. I think you have to do that and experiment, switch up the show. So I'm excited to see what happens.
It looks so much different than a door car, though, that I don't think you'll really tarnish that. I
do think you have to be careful of it, though.
And the track's going to be not prepped.
To play,
so this is going to be really fun to watch.
That'll be the interesting thing to see too, is how the cars perform.
But just playing devil's advocate, I know how racers historically have reacted to things like this. And historically, racers don't like being shown up, right? And I think that there's one reason that it could work is that the scoreboards aren't on, right? Like, I think if you had these fuel cars go out there and clip the field by a second, which they're capable of doing, that would be, it would detract, right? It would make, but I got to tell you, man, there's a psychological thing that you have to be aware of, because you've got all these guys, Murder Nova, Chuck Seitzinger, Justin Swanstrom. They're the stars of the show. There's no one there stealing their thunder. There's no one there that's on their level. They're called the invite. It's the invitational, right? I mean, there are racers crisscrossing the country trying to break into that scene. And I think it's partly because that they are the show. No one's stealing their thunder. No one's showing them up or one-upping them or whatever, because I'm telling you, man, I'm the ultimate door slammer guy. But dude, you put a couple of top fuel dragsters out there hanging 8-9 foot flames out of them, it pretty much makes everything else look lackluster. So I do think, I'm curious I can't imagine that there's not an end game. And that was not a play on words with the new Street Outlaws show. It did work out.
I'd have just let that go, man.
But don't you agree that, because I was going to ask before our conversation with Tyler and Courtney went long, which was a great conversation actually. But I was going to ask, like, what's going to be the next big thing in drag racing, right? Like, we've seen 8th Mile Pro Mod explode and really change our sport. Then we saw radial tire racing explode and really change our sport. Now we've seen this no prep movement explode and really change our sport. And I've been thinking, and I was going to challenge the two of you to I didn't want to give you a lot of time to think about it because I want it to be off the cuff, but like, what is the next big thing? I mean, is it top fuel cars racing on less prep tracks? I mean, what is the next big thing that's going to happen?
Well, if we can figure it out, we could all get rich, right?
Well, hey, maybe we will.
Yeah.
Because I can't help but feel like the group at Pilgrim, the group of track owners that are involved with No Prep Kings, not from like an ownership, but the tracks they partner with, I see they have one thing in common: a willingness to step outside of the box, a willingness to try new things. I mean, a lot of these tracks, the tracks No Prep Kings go to, Houston, Tulsa, these are tracks that are used to putting Texas Motorplex. I mean, these are tracks that are used to trying stuff, right? Used to stepping out of their comfort zone, racing cars on the back of the track, holding a 7 or 8 or 9 day long festival of speed like they did down here in Dallas last fall, the Stampede of Speed. These are some risk takers. And I can't imagine between Sam Corcus and Pilgrim Studios, Discovery Channel, and all the folks that we just mentioned, there's not some sort of view for the future or vision for the future. Do you guys have any inkling what you think that might be? I mean, does this...
I don't know how it relates to that or their future thoughts, but to your question about what's next, I feel like necessity always breeds innovation. And we talked to Tyler Crossnow off camera about, this potential VH
shortage.
Glue. We call it glue shortage. And that could come into play toward the end of the year and make no prep racing even more important and viable. And it may be something that we just see the entire industry move toward, using less of it. If it becomes more of a scarce resource, that
what
the
are some
entire
other
industry
examples
has to
of
like
that?
ration it?
Of where we've just changed it. Like, obviously, necessity is the mother of invention, but like, I'm trying to think of some other, like an analogy that we could use of where this is the way it was always done. And then because laws changed or the world changed, we just stopped doing that. I think about it kind of like the mask thing. Like with COVID, everybody, I still see people wearing masks all the time. Like it's the new normal. And I wonder if on the heels of this nationwide or worldwide glue shortage, and for those that don't know, that we have had a handful of conversations about this early in the year with Freddie Terza from VP Racing Fuels, but it's being much talked about in our industry right now. NHRA stockpiling, traction compound, a lot of sanctions and series reducing the number of test sessions they host.
Tracks using a variety of different stuff.
Using a variety of different compounds due to the fact fact that there is a chemical that we believe is called lutenol, I think is what we decided that it was, that is no longer being produced in Germany, which it has historically been produced. Germany doesn't want it manufactured there. No one else has picked up the ball on manufacturing this chemical, and therefore it's a super scarce resource. And people that develop these traction compounds like VP Racing Fuels, like PJ1, are kind of scrambling to figure out what the next iteration of this product is going to be, how it's going to have to change, what they're going to have to do. But I wonder if it does become like the new normal, where this ultra crazy track prep just becomes a thing of the past overnight, kind of like it. I mean, obviously it's back, but I mean, you didn't even wonder if you were wearing a mask in the airport for the last 3 years. Right. It's just something we started doing. And I wonder if we're going to see a similar light switch moment where, that kind
of goes to what I think would be like one of the, I mean, I don't know if this could happen. I mean, it could happen, but what I would like to see, what I think would be really cool, is maybe like a just huge one time a year, no prep race, but it paid so much that, and anybody could come in, right? So it paid so much that you had your cast from over here at Street Outlaws. You had your guys, like maybe John Force Racing builds a car and has right. Robert Hyde in it. Maybe Antron Brown's in a car, Clay Milliken, Lyle Barnett. We're pulling. Maybe Elite Motorsports fields a couple cars. I mean, how cool would that be to see everybody, kind of on the same playing field out there, all competing for this big amount of money?
That has always been my vision for the World Series of Pro Mod. That's right. What I wanted that event to be, from day
crossover
one,
racing, right? Yeah.
Because I really, it's like the way Cruz Pedregon, and I'm kind of talking, I don't know all the exact details, but like, it's not a huge surprise to see Cruz Pedregon, Ron Capps, Doug Coletta jump in a sprint car and race the Chili Bowl. Right? Because it's the freaking Chili Bowl.
That and right? Eldora, and there's some
Knoxville or whatever. Right. I mean, there are events like that.
It can't just be just the money, right? It's got to be, it has to have enough clout. Yes. And
there's room in our sport.
You want to go win
that event.
You want to go win that some bitch.
It may well be the World Series of Pro Mod. There's room in our sport for that, and that's always been my vision. Is that there are enough teams and shops that are building and producing like turnkey race ready cars. Like if you wanted to go pro mod racing tomorrow, you could rent a car and be in the hunt. If you can, you could call Proline, you could call Ricky Smith, you could call Elite Motorsports, you could call Mike Janis, you could call Al Billis, you could call Stevie Jackson. I mean, the list goes on, and you could have a car and be ready to race this weekend if you had the resources. And I honestly think that I've just been thinking a lot about this. An 8th mile pro mod race could be that event. Like there's no reason in the world there's not a Chili Bowl in drag racing where Leah Pruitt is in a pro mod car for this race. Everybody is. Ron Capps is in one.
It's like the Kentucky Derby.
It's the Kentucky Derby of drag racing. I think that there's
the Super Bowl. It's Darlington. I mean, not Darlington, but Daytona.
Yes.
It's the big one. It's the one you want. It's the only race that's really circled on your calendar for the year.
Something, and also something to like galvanize,
to win that,
and bring together a scattered group. Group that maybe only races over here, or there are other pockets, but bring all of them together. And it's kind of like your outlaws versus your pros, or whatever.
So awesome, wouldn't that be awesome?
Well, I mean, that's what we need. And I think ladies and gentlemen, as we wrap up here, I do want to run through and just thank all of the sponsors of the Wes Buck Show, from Redline Synthetic Oils, Flow Racing, Elite HP, Stroud Safety, of course, Sand Haulers of America, Holly Performance Products. Thank you guys so much for your support, your trust, your belief, and your shared vision for the sport of drag racing. We could not do this show without you guys. So please, all y'all that watch along or listen along every week, make sure you support the companies that support us. Again, Redline Synthetic Oils, Stroud Safety, Made in America Safety Products, Elite High Performance, the world leader in new and used race cars, parts, and engines. Flow Racing, I believe the world leader in sports live streaming. Holly Performance Products, and lastly, but not leastly, Elite High Performance. Well, did I already say that? Elite High Performance. Let me see.
Yep.
Elite High Performance, Flow Racing, Stroud Safety. Okay, thank you guys so much from the bottom of my heart. Guys, do you think that could be the answer? Maybe the start of this movement, Drag Racing's Chili Bowl, is the World Series of Pro Mod coming back and being this place where people from PDRA come, people from NHRA come, people from Northeast Outlaw Pro Mod Association come, people from Midwest Drag Racing Series come, people from NMCA come, and it starts to be this place where a guy, you know, maybe Ron Capps, he's a team owner of his own now. He's looking for more ways to provide value to Napa Auto Parts. I mean, would he not want to participate in the biggest payout drag race in the world?
Right?
You would think you would, you know, so there's some things like that. And I do think that the sport of drag racing, I joke about this a lot. We got to think bigger. I think a lot of times we're talking about how can we get 5,000 people to the racetrack? How can we get 50,000 people to the racetrack? How can we get 500,000 downloads? Let's screw 500, screw 5,000. Like, we've got to shoot bigger. And I really think that, you know, this conversation here today, guys, will be the catalyst for something really significant, because I truly believe there's room in our industry for a major. You know what I mean? There's a lot of golf tournaments, but there's only a couple majors, and this drag racing badly needs another major, man. So, hey guys, thanks a bunch. Huge shout out to Courtney Enders and the team at Flow Racing, of course, longtime partners of ours, Tyler Crossnow and the family out there at the PDRA. Looking forward to a great weekend of racing. Again, our hearts collectively go out to the Freeman family and Elite Motorsports for what is absolutely a tragic loss here in the drag racing community. Guys, you got anything else we want to touch on, or get the shoots out?
I think you got it. Let's pull the shoots.
Man.
All right, man. Well, hey, everybody, thank you so much. Remember to like, share, help us spread the gospel of drag racing, and we will see you again next Wednesday afternoon, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, right here on the West Buck Show. Thanks, guys.
Later, y'all.
Thanks, everybody.